Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call this meeting to order. We have a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance led by Ms. Hill.
Salute, flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to everyone in attendance, and thank you for being here this morning. Please note for the record that Ms. Babb is attending electronically due to a family emergency. If we should experience technical difficulties with the electronic connection during our meeting, we will need to pause to correct that since we are voting on items today. So I wanted everybody to be aware of that. Mr. McMillan is en route and running late, so he may not be here for this portion of the meeting, so hopefully he'll arrive shortly. Before we move forward on the agenda, I want to quickly provide the public with an explanation regarding our meeting schedule today. I originally scheduled a called meeting today for the purpose of approving Superintendent Thomas's annual summative evaluation and discussion regarding his employment contract. After we announced the meeting date, Ms. Satterfield made a very respectful request for the board to entertain an additional agenda item. Because our previously scheduled called meeting was announced solely for the purpose of the evaluation and contract, in order to approve Ms. Satterfield's request, I agreed to schedule an additional called meeting due to the time-sensitive nature of the resolution. That is why we have called meetings for both 9:30 and 9:50 today. So I appreciate everyone's patience in the change of schedule. In summary, following the reading and action of this single agenda item, we will adjourn for 5 minutes and reconvene in a second called meeting to consider the superintendent's evaluation. So that's our plan for the morning, okay? Are there any requested changes to the agenda? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ms. Coatney.
Approve resolution acknowledging Juneteenth and affirming Black lives in Knox County schools.
Okay, Ms. Satterfield, would you like to speak? Yes.
You want me to read it first? and
Let's
then we
see.
move?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the resolution reads as following. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation effective January 1st, 1863, freeing the enslaved in the South and the rest of the United States. However, many, if not all, Southern slave owners ignored that order. On June 19, 1865, Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, and enforced the president's order, freeing the enslaved 2.5 years after it was first decreed. This day has since come to be known as Juneteenth. And whereas Knoxville, Tennessee recognizes August 8th as Emancipation Day, on August 8th in 1863, Tennessee military governor Andrew Johnson freed those individuals enslaved in Greenville, Tennessee. And whereas systems of oppressions have continued in the United States since June 19, 1865, such as segregated schools and communities, disparities in educational outcomes that include, but not limited to, a higher suspension rates among Black students, over-policing of Black students, and disproportionately representation of Black students within special education. And whereas the impact of inadequate representation of Black educators in Knox County schools and the inconsistency of culturally relevant practices affects the physical, mental health, and safety of the education of Black students. And whereas acknowledging these forms of institutionalized racism is an imperative step to support the Knox County Schools 2019 to 2024 strategic plan. Now, therefore, it be resolved that Knox County School Board of Education recognizes Juneteenth, June 19, as an annual celebration of the past, present, and future of Black liberation and those who work towards that liberation that is recognized on the KCS annual calendar, and a constant reminder to continue to work towards eliminating educational disparities within Knox County schools, and an opportunity to recognize the impact, achievements, and contributions from Black staff, teacher, administrators, and students in the Knox County community at large.
Thank you, Ms. Satterfield. Do you,
Oh,
do you want
well, I don't know if you
comment?
want it during the discussion or do you want it after the
We
second?
are, have we read?
We actually need a motion and a second
Yeah.
to get this on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had the motion to approve the agenda, but not, thank you. Ms. Coatney?
The item I can reread it. The
Well,
proposed
no,
resolution.
No, that's okay.
I would like to make the motion to adopt this resolution.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Owen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ready for
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And so I just want to kind of give a just kind of explanation of how we got here, why we're doing this, and the goal of supporting a resolution like this. So when we had a meeting called on June 19th, I was like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to educate the community of this important date for certain community members. And so that is where the historical aspect of Juneteenth is coming from, because today is a day of celebration. And so I want us to publicly share this information, because we are a school system, that Juneteenth is an important holiday. Also, I wanted to pinpoint, because one of our elements on the strategic plan is eliminating disparities, and I think it's important to call out those disparities so that people can know what exactly we're working towards. And then also people will also know that Knox County Schools does have these things in place that we are working to eliminate these disparities. And so this is more of a public approach to showing the disparities that we acknowledge in Knox County Schools, also indicating that it's in our strategic plan. We also have a disparities of educational task force that's working towards it, and this is the direction that we need to go. Also, it is another aspect, the last aspect of it is properly acknowledging the Black students, the Black teachers, and the Black administrators that we have in Knox County Schools, given the climate that we're in right now, and understanding that your voice and your contributions to Knox County Schools is important, and we value you. This resolution is honestly acknowledging and also asking for the date of Juneteenth to be on the calendar. The resolution is not asking for things that we see across the nation in regards to ending contracts with with KPD or making it a federal or a paid holiday. This is just asking to acknowledge where we are, the work that we're doing, and the work that we need to continue to do.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other questions, discussion?
And Madam Chair, I would like a roll call vote, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. Mr. Norman, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess I do. I'm totally in agreement with what Evody has proposed. I do think that we do need to be careful about language, and I do have some hesitation about some of the things that are in that included in this. I'll go ahead and vote for it, but you know, I'm out of here. I'm only here for another month. I think the system needs to be very careful, of course, with the issue of race. And when we bring it up, it's such a sensitive issue. The whatever we do, if the language, I'm looking for language that brings us together and emphasizes that the things that we all have in common. And so, you know, when in the phrases that are out there, you know, in the public sphere, like institutional racism and systemic whatever, I totally think those things don't apply to us. They don't apply to Knox County. They're not part of my experience, and I've been dealing with education in Knox County for 40 years. So I know, and probably in terms of people that I would be considered, you know, somewhat racist, I can't even identify anybody in 40 years that I would say you're racist. And I know that there are some. There are a few, and there's some little pockets. in places, probably in the county. But I do think that we need to be very careful, and the more that we talk about race, I think it's almost the more divisive it is. And so I'd just like to emphasize that to the board. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. I'm not sure who had their mic.
go ahead.
Ms. Hill,
Ms.
Ms. Bounds. Go ahead, Ms. Bounds.
Okay, thank you, Ebony, for bringing this to the board's attention and on a special day like this. I would feel better, given that we don't have anything listed in here as to the steps that we've taken to improve things. I mean, I can support this. I would feel better if a friendly motion was made, whereas we just struck, like it said, whereas systems of oppression continue in the United States, or have continued since June 19th, 1865, and not list specifics in this resolution. We know what those specifics are in Knox County Schools, and we're trying to address them. And then also the next line, whereas there is inadequate representation of black educators in Knox County Schools, and just end it there. It would make the resolution shorter, but I think it would make it, I think it makes it a cleaner document not to have those specific things listed. Does that make sense? I don't know. So that would be my thoughts on it. I can support it and probably will support it either way. I just don't particularly want to include that language without, and I don't think this is the place for it, because I think we're not addressing some of the other things that we have addressed, and so it just calls out these things. But that's my thoughts, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate your service on the board and bringing it to the board. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hill.
And I echo some of Ms. Bounds' concerns and understand what a sensitive topic this is, and appreciate all of us. Everybody is here to do what's best for students. In that light, as I read the resolution though, and I hope you all will just know my heart when I say this, because I think I'm treading on some rocky territory. However, when I looked at the things that we were being asked to resolve, the first is an annual celebration of past, present, and future of black liberation and those who work toward the liberation that recognizes KCS annual calendar. When I look at what we are already doing, as you pointed out, August 8th has already been recognized as Emancipation Day. When I look at the celebration that we have in our schools already on Martin Luther King Day, when I look at the fact that we have a month, a whole month in our system dedicated to Black History Month, and I actually just Googled it for Knox County Schools to see what kind of things that we do in that month of February to celebrate Black History Month. And you all already know a lot of these. You know, many of our schools have Black History programs. We have celebrations of Martin Luther King and Carter Wilson. We make extensive use of the Poetry Foundation, which is a collection of poems, articles, podcasts of African American culture and history. We have the outstanding work of the Beck Cultural Center that comes and just supports us not just during Black History Month, but all year long. Will come into any of our schools and help us in that regard. I actually saw we've had displays of the African American Wax Museum. We have some Black History student organizations that come together and do things within their schools to try to raise awareness of some of the very things that you're talking about. I know, Ms. Satterfield, you're very well of what AE does with their drum corps and their dancing and the many programs that they do in the community and in our other schools. you know, we have an African American history class. We have a full curriculum developed that highlights African American history. We have specific scholarship opportunities that are directed toward hardworking African American students, not only within academia, but many of our civic clubs. We have numerous Black History luncheons. I even found that the National Conference on African American History offers scholarship to some of our students here in Knox County if they care to go and participate in that. So I feel like that is a significant contribution, a whole month that we are specifically focusing on Black history. We have contests, we have essay and scholarship contests, we have bookmark contests, we have poems celebrating Black History Month, we have painting and drawing contests, this type of thing that go out through all of our schools, recognizing Black history and everything that comes with that, including the hardships and the inequities and all that have come through. I don't feel that this is a subject that we have at all ignored or not tried to address. In the section number 2 in resolve, a constant reminder to continue the work toward eliminating educational disparities. I fully believe with the work of our DOE task force that we're working hard. We're working hard every day to do that. We continue to pour a multitude of resources into our students, some of them that have the most severe inequities, be it race, be it income, be it special education issues. I mean, Knox County Schools is doing this. We are doing this. And then the third resolution probably is the one that bothers me the most, an opportunity to recognize the impact and achievements and contributions from Black staff, teachers, administrators, and students of the Knox County community at large. I think we make a real mistake when we single out a specific group for achievement like this. We are all in this together. And to do this for one particular entity based strictly on the color of your skin, I feel like is a disservice to the many, many other minorities that we have in our school system, many, many other minorities. I just think the fact that we should all be in this together, that to do even more than we already do, given our Black History Month and all the genuine recognition, is probably just not necessary. I guess that's my best. It's not necessary. A couple of quotes that I read on our website. This is talking about Black History Month. This is an important month for remembering people, events, and acknowledgement of African Americans. That is a huge acknowledgement. Please note that Black History Month is American history, and it should be celebrated 365 days a year, and just not in the month of February. I think that's very much the message that is sent. So, again, recognizing, I hope kindly, Ms. Satterfield, your heart behind this. I just personally feel as a community citizen and as a school board member that we are already doing a lot of this, and to do this for one and not do this for all is probably not a good precedent to send. I mean, it's like we're all in this together until we're not. So that, for those reasons, I will not be able to support this resolution.
Okay, we're getting close on, we're past our appointed time, so let's be mindful of the time. Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Satterfield, please correct me if I'm wrong in how I'm reading this, but it looks to me like this resolution does not ask for a celebration. The language says that it is to recognize that it is an annual celebration, and that's not asking for any additional anything on the part of our staff or students. It's not asking for a celebration. It's not asking for any time in the classroom. I really can't see how we can argue against adding a notation to a calendar. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Christie?
Yeah, I'm just, and I do support this. I'm just curious, I guess I would like to hear from Mr. Dupler or Mr. Thomas to see if they have any specific concerns about the language in the, I guess specifically in the fourth paragraph of the first page.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ms. Christie, members of the board. Appreciate a few minutes just to speak to this and address this, and Mrs. Satterfield was correct. It's been a priority. If you go back and look to probably February 17, I guess, when I applied for this job, that was a priority. That priority is on the strategic plan, so that should look familiar. But I have continued to support and participate in the disparities in education out the task force. I've also, we've included created position, the position of ombudsman. That position I put on my leadership team. That position also has a direct connection to me at any point in time that I need to know that what she needs for me to know. I've also worked with Tanya Coates and Paula Hancock in our Knox County Education Association to form and establish the first Minority Advisory Council in the history of Knox County schools, at least that I'm aware of, 47 years. I've never heard of that before. We created a Department of School Culture. We've recommended 2 positions within the Department of School Culture dedicated to cultural responsiveness training. One of those positions remains unfilled because of budgetary constraints, but a goal is to get that position filled. Also recommended that cultural responsiveness training be brought in-house so that we could have people waking up every day thinking about cultural responsiveness training rather than having it outsourced and conducting only on in-service days. So I've made disparities a goal from the time I was appointed to this position. I'm against academic disparities. I'm against disciplinary disparities. I'm against racial disparities of any kind in any form, and I'll continue to work to eliminate all disparities. So therefore, I wholeheartedly support Mrs. Satterfield's resolution in its entirety, and if Ms. Satterfield wants to accept modifications, as long as she accepts those modifications, I'll support that as well. And I would urge each board member to support that resolution as well. So that is my position and my opinion, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Dupler, did you want to weigh in? Thank you.
I can. Of course, I worked with Ms. Satterfield on drafting the resolution. This was mainly her words. I just looked at it from a legal standpoint. The legal standpoint is that Juneteenth is a recognized U.S. holiday, not yet recognized officially in Tennessee, but it is before the state legislature, and that could be going on today for all we know, frankly. Yeah. So that's the legal position. Ms. Christie, you asked about paragraph 4. It's my understanding, and this board has talked about it, as far as the first part of paragraph 4, there's just a lack of available black educators, unfortunately. And then the second part of paragraph 4 is frankly vague from a legal sense. So without much more, someone would have to prove some type of liability. I mean, there'd have to be a lot more facts involved. So, yeah.
Ms. Bounds?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dupler, which way should I make this, as a friendly motion or a substitute motion if I wanted to make a motion to delete the specifics of this and as we address them through our strategic plan, and in light of what the superintendent said as to how he's worked to change the culture in Knox County, and in light of Ms. Hill. So would it be better as a friendly motion or a substitute? Does it matter?
That would be your choice, Ms. Bounds. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, either one. I mean, you would have to ask Ms. Satterfield about a friendly motion, obviously.
Okay, Ms. Satterfield, it's your resolution, so out of respect to you, I would like to make a friendly amendment to this resolution or motion to this resolution, supporting the thought behind it, recognizing Juneteenth, but just eliminating those. I know the purpose of it was to bring attention to those items, but I just think the resolution would be better without those. So, and still address that oppression continues and we still need more black educators in Knox County. So I don't know, you may or may not accept my friendly motion to strike those parts from the resolution, but still keep the resolution intact.
And those are the, in the paragraph 3?
Just the, yeah, well, paragraph 3 after 1865, and then paragraph 4, just whereas there is inadequate representation of black educators, or we could just say in Knox County schools, and however you want to end that sentence, let's see. Whereas there is inadequate representation of black educators in Knox County schools, and just leave it there.
Ms. Satterfield?
Hi, thank you, Board Member Bounds. I will respectfully reject that opportunity too, because I believe that we're in this situation now that we are, because we're afraid to call it out, and I think we have to call it out to do the work. And in order for us to do the work, you have to name the things that we're working towards. And you're right, Board Member Hill, we're doing this work, and this is the opportunity for us to amplify the work that's already being done, and for us to support the superintendent when he presents things that he wants to do to directly affect this change. We know exactly what he's talking about when he's talking about disparities, because this is data that is from the task force. These are the disparities that are in Knox County schools. We have many of them, but these are the ones that are highlighting, and these are the ones that are keeping Knox County schools from being the top school district. Again, my personal goal. I will talk about, and you can help me out with this, Gary, in the area where adding the word may affects with the liability aspect. I know that was presented to me. So in paragraph 4, where it says relevant practices may affect, I know that could get us into a lawsuit possibly without having that. And so could you speak to that a little bit? Because I'll be willing to accept that change, because Knox County schools can't afford the losses that we'll get from that.
Mr. Dupler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Satterfield. May affect would be a good amendment, simply to clarify. I think your intent, Ms. Satterfield, which is to highlight these things, not to say that that Knox County Schools is intentionally doing these things, which has not been proved. I mean, something like that would have to be proved in court. So I do think that would help clarify the situation. Yes.
Okay. So we are back to, would you accept the may affect in paragraph 4? Paragraph 4, would any... Go ahead, Mr. Dupler.
So, Ms. Satterfield, are you making that amendment to your own motion at this point?
I will make the amendment to add may affect the physical and mental health of safety of black and education of black students on the strength of the research shows that it does directly affect these things, but Knox County schools cannot afford the lawsuits that could come from that. So I will make the motion to add may.
And Ms. Owen, do you second that amendment?
I was going to move some other words around, but I can second that amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the motion by Ms. Satterfield and a second by Ms. Owen. And so that is currently what is on the floor. Okay. And Ms. Owen, did you have a comment? No? Okay. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll take a roll call vote, Ms. Cooney. Correct? Actually, wait just one second. No, I think she said no. You are good, right? Okay, and one more thing. Mr. McMillan, you joined us late. Do you feel comfortable in voting since you've missed part of the conversation? Okay, all right. So we're good now? Okay, so Ms. Courtney.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Ms. Bounds?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan? Ms. Christie?
Yes.
Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Ms. Hill, would you like to change your pass vote? That's
Okay.
8 yes,
8 yes.
yes, 0 no
And
vote,
one
and 1
pass.
pass.
Motion carries. Okay, and let's see. We have board forum. Oh, that's the second meeting. Okay, I think we are adjourned until we will begin when that clock says 10. I'm sorry.
I'm confused. I thought that was the amendment to the motion to add May, not the motion. So we have to still.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so that was the amendment. I apologize.
It's a lot
Getting,
going on.
getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, so is there any, do we need another motion now to approve the
I guess you
amended?
can read it again.
Okay. Okay, and this would be the amended resolution.
Approve resolution acknowledging Juneteenth and affirming Black lives in Knox County schools.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Owen. Discussion. Ms. Satterfield?
No discussion.
No? Okay.
We vote.
Anyone have discussion at this point? Okay, Ms. Courtney, we'll have a roll call vote now.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Ms. Hill? Ms. Bounds? Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Ms. Christie? Ms. Horn?
Yes.
8 yes votes.
Eight yes votes? No, 7, right? 7 yes votes and 2 pass. Correct? Ms. Bounds and Ms. Hill. Okay. Motion carries. Okay. And now we are adjourned. We will begin again at, let's begin at 10:12. How about that? That's 5 minutes. Seat. We need a couple of key people here. Miss Brown.
Thank you for taking that and doing it. That's good.
There's an amendment and an original contract. That's the one on your right hand is the amendment that we approved last year. Last year.
I thought it was a new.
No, that's current, yeah. Okay, let me, hold on one second. Okay. We didn't even think about acknowledging her at all. Okay, we will begin our second called meeting of the day, and since we previously observed a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance, we will go straight to changes in the agenda. Are there any requested changes to this meeting agenda? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we have gathered to review the superintendent's annual evaluation and the employment contract, discussion around a future employment contract, and I just have a couple of comments before we start, really in the way of announcements, and then we will turn to, I think we have one person for public forum, and then we will have our discussion. This evaluation, well, obviously, this evaluation is not looking at student achievement since students did not take T and Ready scores. Therefore, I made the call to really take out that entire section. And, you know, I think that Ms. Coatney has expressed to me that some people have been frustrated with that. So I apologize that we could have looked at a few more of those data points. My decision was really that since teachers weren't being evaluated on the year that, and because of the students not taking T and Ready, that was the reason I made that decision. So I know that some people may have been frustrated with that. This evaluation tool, in addition, I think this is the second year we've used this tool, if I'm not mistaken. And so some of us were on that committee to review the tool that we use. And I think that when we did it, we knew that we may need to revisit the tool. So I think that we're probably at that point. I think there are some ways that it can be improved. And I've heard from Ms. Coatney that some people have had a little bit of frustration around using this particular evaluation tool. So in July, I would like to announce a new committee to review the evaluation tool to bring it up to something that board members are happy with. The issue is that time is short because we're reorganizing in September. So, and on the other hand, we need to make sure that Mr. Thomas knows what is being evaluated as we go into a new school year. So I'm hoping that the committee will not want to make huge changes. I'm looking for tweaks that can kind of take care of some of the issues, because we did spend considerable time on this, I think 2 years ago. So if anyone is interested in that, we won't discuss that right now. I'm just making an announcement. If you're interested in that, please give your name to Ms. Coatney, and we'll revisit that particular item at our July meeting. And so that's really just in the way of an announcement. And now we will turn to public forum, Ms. Coatney.
Madam Chair, we have one speaker, Lance McCold. And Mr. McCold, if you can state your name and county of residence for the record. And also, I will be keeping time up here on a timer since the timer's not on the screen.
Thank you. Lance McCold, Knox County. I wanted to speak to the performance review. First off, I want to say, Mr. Thomas, we appreciate you. I'm glad you're here. I'm hoping that the board decides to continue your tenure. But performance reviews have a checkered history. Sometimes they're, and if you've gone through them yourselves, as I have, sometimes they're like, oh, let's see if we can get you on something. Let's see if, or other ones are like, they're really constructive. This is what you should be doing better, Lance, and this is how you can do it. And it's in that spirit that I'm coming to you to make some suggestions today. I think, Mr. Thomas, you are not holding your staff to a high enough standard. And I'm not talking about the teachers. I'm talking about the staff you work with all the time. I'm going to lift up 3 examples of things where the staff has not served you well, and they all have happened pretty recently. If I could come up with others. If I didn't think this was a pattern, I wouldn't even say anything about it. But last winter and at the March meeting about the disparities, one of your staff, and I'll just skip his name, made a presentation about statistics, about how we're doing on statistics, and he didn't even understand the stuff he was presenting. Now, I don't know who put him in that position. I'm sure he's a really good man, really good at what he does, but it doesn't serve, it makes you look bad, it makes the community think you don't actually care about this stuff when you do that. So that's, that's a place where your staff failed to serve you, in my view. And more recently in this Chromebook presentation, we got this very brief presentation that somebody in the staff prepared for you, and then there were all these obvious questions that everybody had, the community had, when you bring something to the community and to the board, you ought to have done your homework, and it was quite apparent that the homework hadn't been done. So I think there's another example of the staff needs to be held to a higher standard. And I'm going to finish, 3 examples is the stuff you're supposed to do. The latest one that's really come to my attention is our security chief, who has for over a year faced legitimate complaints about misogyny, racism, and retaliation against staff who raised concerns about his behavior. Now, Mr. Thomas, you have demonstrated you are all for improving school culture, but when you allow a person who people perceive, and now I'm not saying whether he's done all these things or not, perceive and have behaved this way, you open up you say that everybody thinks, well, now, does he really mean it, or is he just saying the words? So now I don't know how all this happened, but there's another example of the staff is not serving you and the community adequately. So I would like to say to the board, I think, I would hope that you take this and have somebody on the board, a designated person who will work with Mr. Thomas to, over the next 6 months, concentrate on resolving this problem and making a pattern of having the staff do our high quality work and make sure that the behaviors that are inconsistent with the strategic plan and Mr. Thomas's stated values are corrected. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone has a copy of the evaluation. Do we have comments, questions, discussion? The overall score is 3.6, which is meets standard. Ms. Satterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to talk about quickly the conversation that I had with Superintendent Thomas in our meeting is that I asked him why he didn't put 5 where he did exceptionally well, and he's a humble man he is. But I will like to say that I think that Superintendent has done a phenomenal job with working with our local government, and especially with the TVA deal and the schools closing, they have a strong relationship, and he shows up at the county commissioner meetings. And so I personally gave him a 5 because I think that he did an exceptional job in that area this past year.
Thank you so much for bringing that out. Ms. Hill? Did you have something?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Ms. Babb, did you want to comment? Okay. Any other, Ms. Owen?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would just note that this is actually sort of the third year we've used this tool because the original version of it was used previously. So that was created by a different committee. So two committees have been through it. One thing that we discussed as a committee when we reworded pieces of it was that it was absolutely necessary that we have someone from research to present scores to us, but also that we have someone either from research or from HR, wherever, to address the board prior to this evaluation time last year and this year, so that every board member could fully understand exactly what was expected in every section. And it didn't happen this year, it didn't happen last year, and that is, I think, where a lot of the problem is coming from with some of these. If we had that direction, I think it would help quite a bit. And we also discussed that it shouldn't come from us. You know, we shouldn't be telling other board members how to score. It should come from outside.
Yes,
So
and
I
Ms.
think that would
Owen,
help a lot.
In fact, I meant to, in my announcement earlier, I meant to say, I think that when there is a new, when we relook at this, it needs to include a timeline so that everyone is aware of the timeline and have all of those things included in it. I think if you have a new chair every year, I'm learning as being a chair, having not done this before, I'm chalking this up to another thing that since I've never done this before, like I would do it differently given, the second chance. So I think that certainly is part of the issue. Since we often do have a new chair, you don't have the continuity to make sure that something like that continues. So I think if we have a timeline that addresses when all of these things are to happen, to include when REA does their surveys, to include when HR would do their portion, and all of these, I think that would be very helpful. So honestly, in my mind, when we reconvene a committee to look at the evaluation tool, it really is more about adding a timeline rather than changing anything. There may be some minor additions or deletions. I think there's a couple places that were redundant. We may want to delete and maybe add something in its place. So that's why I don't think that the work will take very long, because I don't think we're going to take this and redo it. I think it's really about clarifying and making it a tool that is really more usable for all of us and more helpful to the superintendent. Does that help?
It does, and I would just note we thought that last time too.
I know. I mean, yeah. Yes, it is, and I think we knew that it wouldn't. Yes, we had this pandemic that has, kind of thrown a wrench in everything. I'm not sure if the public realizes how much the entire calendar is thrown off. Everything, anything, everything. The calendar's thrown off, down to the fact that, we didn't have the physical things for graduation because the companies weren't producing them, until the last minute. So this year has certainly been an exception. So I think that as we retool, we will think toward a more normal situation for next year when we're in this position. But I think that a timeline would help tremendously. Ms. Bounds?
Thank you. Yes, and this doesn't pertain to the superintendents, but it does pertain to what Ms. Owens said, and I think it's very crucial that I mention this and it goes in the record because sometimes we lose institutional knowledge with new board members and how that changes in Knox County every 4 years. When I came on the board in 2014, having been an educator and trained in team and then being a lead evaluator of other teachers, I realized that the superintendent's evaluation was not in line with what the educators and other staff participated in. I brought a motion. Mr. McMillan appointed me as chair of to draw up a new superintendent evaluation. I believe Ms. Hill served on that we looked at models from all over the United States. The problem was that our former superintendent did a narrative model where he was able to write his own evaluation as kind of in story form, and had testified before the United States Congress as to how effective this kind of document was to evaluate teachers. So I felt like that was very contradictory, would be a nice word to use for that. So that's how we came up with this document. And I'm like you, I think it can be tweaked. I have had concerns from the beginning, and I sat in your chair for 2 years, and Ms. Hill sat there, so we know how hard it is. Teachers were trained on this forever. I mean, multiple trainings. Yellow highlighter, I wore multiple highlighters out, highlighting keywords to look for and all of that. And then as a lead trainer, I had to take a test, and it had to be within, I don't know, hundreds of passing the test of how I evaluated to be able to fill out this form. And so I think we have really lacked in training the board on that. And I know I have spoken to some of the superintendent staff, and there are plenty of people that have either done this as principals or been highly trained that could train the board. So I would like to see that on the fall retreat, as part of our fall retreat. It's not a retreat anymore, a fall work session where the board is actually trained on the evaluation model. Whatever the board develops in July, that the board receives training on it, and there are people that have been trained in this method and this model that could very well do that training for the board. And I think it would help some of the people that are very unfamiliar with this kind of an evaluation model. But it is in alignment with what the teachers and the administration and people have to do in Knox County schools. So sorry, but I just wanted to, you have to have that institutional knowledge to know where we've been and where we're going.
Yes,
So
history is definitely important. And I do think that we can add that. We will likely do a fall and a spring retreat day or workshop day, so we can certainly add that to one of those, Ms. Coatney. We can add that to the agenda. Mr. Norman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say a couple of things about the contract or the coming contract. First of all, just from a historical standpoint, the school system in this board also, the school system is very different, I think in a very positive way due to Mr. Thomas's leadership. I do agree, actually, though, with some of Mr. McColl's ideas as regards the staff. I do think that the staff has not helped in some significant ways, so I don't discount that. But given where we were in the previous superintendent and where we are now, it's quite a different place, and it's quite a different place positively, especially for our classroom teachers, I think. I hope that will continue. It's not my place to make a motion since I'm out of here as far as his contract, but I do hope that the board will consider that given the length of time that it would take for a search and for all the stuff that would go into the process that would be necessary for whoever follows Mr. Thomas, that at the very least, that's 6 months to a year process. So it seems like at the very least the contract should go to June 2022, something like that, so that we have time, the board has time to do the kind of work that they need to do. But that's up to the board. I'm just hoping that something like that will take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. We have other comments. Ms. Christie?
Yeah, I just, well, as far as the model goes, I don't know how many metrics that we tossed out last year. I just want to note that we did, on the 61 agreed upon metrics, we used 43 this year for the evaluation, and that does bother me. And of those, 3 are automatic scores of 1 or 5, and I don't know if that's how teachers are evaluated or not, if they have those in there for you either get a 1 or a 5 and nothing in between. But I do find that interesting. As far as contract goes, I would be interested to hear what Mr. Thomas's thoughts are on that. I mean, I don't know how, I don't even know if Mr. Thomas wants to stay until June of 2022. I mean,
Okay.
I
And
haven't
we-
had that.
Can we come back to that when we get to that portion of the agenda? Okay, we need to approve the evaluation first. I felt like it was important to really look at some of the positive things that have happened this year, because we've had a really difficult year. And I know Mr. Thomas has said publicly there are things that, certainly did not go as well as he would have liked and as we would have liked. And I appreciate his ability to admit when something hasn't gone as well as it could have. But having been chair this year, I have kind of a front row seat to see how difficult this job is. This is a hard, hard job. And I appreciate the way that you lead us in a steady manner that is, you have a great relationship with the mayor's office and our funding body. I appreciate the way you represent us in public. You never fail to speak about the board's goals along with your goals, and I truly feel like your decision making goes back to supporting our strategic plan and supporting the board's wishes. You're very reactive to and open to comments from this board, and I think that given budget issues, whatever it is, you take into account the thoughts of board members who represent our communities, which is why it's so important that our communities are talking to us, because the superintendent takes all of that into account. So, so when you look at and you consider everything the school system does for this community, it's immense. And so I just want to tell you that I appreciate you and the difficult job that you do. Do we have any other comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hope.
I was just going to clarify for the public, the section that has the yes or no's. When the old version of the evaluation, there was a sort of a true-false section, and the scoring was sort of open-ended, if I recall correctly, and so we tried to determine where those would best fit. And so looking back and forth whether they should be a 2 and a 4 or a 1 and a 5, throughout several discussions, the consensus was that it should be a 1 and a 5, but that the board should be able to adjust that if they felt strongly. And so there is a note at the bottom of that page that says that for the questions 419 through 4111, those are yes and no and should be scored 1 for no and 5 for yes. If there's a strong feeling that a different score should be used, please do so and explain reasons in this comment section. So even though it was to be a yes or no, a board member could have certainly changed those.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. And the thought process behind the chair or the committee making that was the superintendent either participates in all the meetings or he doesn't. It's either a yes or a no. They were really yes or no questions. So I think that's why we kind of went in that vein, but still leaving the opportunity for you to add. Ms. Babb?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I'll probably address those three, and I think once again, this gets to a committee to reevaluate it. When you look at what those three questions are that are yes, no, I mean, to be honest, they're sort of just basic expectations we have of the superintendent that honestly, I think almost it's a 3 would be what you would get. And then I don't know how you exceed expectations of like showing up to meetings. So that, I think this is where I feel like there needs to be some conversation about some things. I mean, it's kind of one of those things, it's almost like he's either not doing just the basic expectation, which would be a 1, but I think if it wasn't showing up, I don't think it's an exceeding expectations and going above and beyond to do things like come to board meetings. So that's where I just think some of these things are just going to take us really looking at it, not necessarily redoing the whole thing, but just kind of bringing some more logic, I think, and some thought after we have looked at this measure for a couple of years, and I totally appreciate those of y'all that did the work, because it's not easy, and I don't know what I would have come up with if I had been on the original committee. But I think after some of us have tried to score this a couple of years, it would be nice to be able to make some tweaks to maybe make it a little bit more sensible.
Okay, yeah, valid concerns, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Babb. Ms. Hill?
Yes, just to reiterate quickly some of the things you said, Ms. Horn, and others have said. Sometimes, and we know this from our own people in our classrooms, sometimes the numbers don't tell the story. You know, they just don't. And we have kind of run into that, I think, very much with our superintendent's evaluation too. I do want to reiterate, just as Ms. Horn said though, I know when I came to the board, I came out of the system of 30 years in Knox County schools. I had worked everywhere from individual schools all the way up into supervision and central office. I thought I came in with a wealth of knowledge, but once I sat where Ms. Horn is sitting and saw a little bit behind the scenes of some of the things that our superintendent actually does have to deal with and contend with, it is hard to come away not feeling like Mr. Thomas hasn't done an exceptional job. So I thank you for that, Bob.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Do we have any other comments? Okay. Mr. Thomas, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, Madam Chair. First of all, appreciate the comments, your comments, and Ms. Hill's comments, and also Mr. McColl's comments too. Appreciate the constructive criticism, and I appreciate all the individual meetings that I've had with board members. Those that helps me. But just a couple of observations about the evaluations I'd like for you to consider. We talk about teacher evaluations, we talk about team evaluation, and we've had this conversation many times, and I know how teachers feel like sometimes the evaluators come in and it's a gotcha. I didn't see you do this, so yeah, I'm going to mark you down on it. So what I value, I guess, as an evaluation instrument is a tool or an instrument to help me grow. And I do appreciate a year-long process too. We've got Tiger evaluation. I hear our teachers talk about the difference there. They feel like when they're evaluated, it's a growth model. It's a year-long process, and just because I didn't do one thing on this particular day, I'm not marked down for it. And I just felt like on this evaluation, and there were some incidents that happened, and I was marked down on those incidents. And that's fine because I own them. February 6th was a bad day. And if you don't remember what day that was, it rained a whole lot, very early in the morning. We went to school. Then we turned around, we went home. Bad decision. Very bad decision. And again, I own that. But, in the scheme of things, we make thousands of decisions, probably maybe even hundreds of thousands of decisions. So, one event, it was bad. So I own that. There was a communication about opening up athletic fields. Well, board members were saying to me, hey, we want our fields open. So we sent out a communication. Okay, 5-star prep or prep star 5, whatever the name is, got it before our administrators did and our coaches did. I'm sorry. I apologize for that, but I don't really know what resulted from that decision just because that they got it first. I agree, principals should have gotten it first, coaches should have gotten it. I own it, okay? That's a mistake. Graduation, mistake. Who in the world would ever figure parents shouldn't come to graduation? Not me. I've been in education 47 years, y'all all know that. I welcome parents. I want relatives, I want friends, I want guests, I want everybody evaluation. But you know what? We were in phase 2 of a pandemic. And the guidelines said no more than 50 people. All right, no more than 50 people. How do you have graduation with no more than 50 people? Somebody told me the guidelines. What they didn't tell me is you don't have to follow them. The mayor told me I didn't have to follow them, so we changed that. So just some examples of some communication mess ups. We've heard from the BEP and the governor, hey, this is your funding. Weeks later, they come back, no, this is not your funding. We're going to cut it 2%. Weeks later, they come back, say they're going to cut it another 2%. You know, we balanced the budget making $10 million worth of cuts. And we didn't touch the classroom in a negative way in terms of our teacher-pupil ratios. I'm proud of that fact. I'm also proud of the fact we kept teachers on contract, that the extended contracts, we were able to do that. We did a lot of things with this budget that, frankly, I'm surprised we did. And I've been doing it for a long time. But that's to the credit of the folks I work with, because, you know, Ron and I know y'all know Ron and Joe and Joni and our finance team and HR team and you know, criticize the staff. I know. Hey, listen, I'm telling you, you've got a dedicated, loyal, knowledgeable staff. And Lance, you're right. Yeah, can we do better? Absolutely, we can do better. And I'll take your comments and we'll try to do better, because I appreciate that. But we've got folks that work hard to your request, your responses, what you want. A few weeks ago, I know some staff, and I won't call names, worked all weekend on a situation. Saturday, Sunday. Folks have worked nights, they've worked days, they've worked spring break, they've worked Saturdays, they've worked Sundays, they've been away from their family time doing things. You know, I'm almost embarrassed at how much I see that they work, and so they do work hard, and they're knowledgeable, like I say, competent, dedicated, and loyal to the cause, and to you as well. So you know, and let me give you another example too. I feel like I was, you know, okay, I got marked down on this. You know, TVA tower. No, I wasn't for it initially. I was not, because again, the investment that we put into this building over the number of years and all, I thought, you know, gosh, that's just money down the drain. But, you know, working with Mayor Jacobs and his staff, the decision was, okay, that's $800,000 that we've been paying to reside in this building. We'll put that back in your budget. You know, well, I'll move down in a tent by the river, you know, to save $800,000 and put the money back in our budget for our students and our teachers. So, you know, I changed my mind on that. You know, I was not going to speak at that joint meeting over there. I was asked to speak. I would not have gone up and spoke if I not been called on to speak. And I do have personal opinions, and I express my personal opinion. You know, and I don't feel like, oh, okay, superintendent ought to be marked down for expressing his personal opinion or for changing his mind about something. You know, leaders do change their mind. Leaders do make mistakes, and leaders own up to the mistakes. And I'll own up to every one I make, and I'll try to do better. I really wish I was perfect. But I try to do the best I can possibly do. And I think there have been a lot of successes. Hey, they're not my successes. They're the staff and this board. You know, no superintendent has ever, in this district, been able to do a one-to-one initiative. Hey, I didn't do it. Our folks did it. You did it. The commission did it. But we're going to be a one-to-one school district, you know, and I appreciate Ms. Horn pointing that out. I think it's important to be one-to-one, whether schools are closed and that's the reason we're one-to-one, or whether schools are open and we're one-to-one. It's going to be advantage. It's going to be a good thing. So, you know, and I do seek input from a lot of people. And I want to say this too. And the people that know me, I hope would say it. You know, Bob Thomas makes his own decisions. I will listen to a lot of people. But I'm telling you, in the end, I will make the decision. But I make that decision based on input from a lot of people. Just like we'll make this decision about school opening here in a few weeks. And, you know, I hope the visual that we send out help people to understand how much input does come in and how receptive we try to be to everyone's input. And, you know, as a board member, hey, see me privately or even say it publicly if you want to. Tell me a time when you have talked to me about a concern that I haven't legitimately tried to address that concern. Now, maybe I have failed to do it, but I think I've tried. So, and again, I'm just, you know, I'm just talking about a lot of things. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the things and share my feelings. So again, I guess that's really all I want to say, Ms. Horton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We appreciate your comments. Oh, you're getting applause. Any other comments? Ms. Bounds, yes.
Yes, I hate to follow that, and thank you for your, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I agree with what you shared. But I will say two things. One, I've taught under 5 different superintendents dating back to Mildred Doyle. Now, that makes me sound really old, but I've had the ability to work under 5 superintendents, and I know their leadership styles, and I know how it impacted my classroom, and I can say without it, and then served on this board under 3 different superintendents. So I know how it impacted the students and the classroom, and I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that Bob Thomas has done a great job. Now, to his point of not wanting to have that gotcha moment, when we were doing all the revisions of the superintendent's evaluation, and I was talking to districts across the country, you might take this into account, or whoever sits in your chair if there's a new one. But some districts do this on a quarterly basis so that the superintendent has some knowledge. And since Bob is a superintendent that does take criticism or listens to that, like Lance McCold, then, and he wants to grow and get better, a quarterly evaluation, it doesn't have to be to this magnitude and a contract and all that, but just a quarterly evaluation. And some districts take part of the evaluation and evaluate it on a quarterly. So I don't know how that'll look going forward, but it's just my suggestion that that might be something that would help the superintendent as he wants to improve, and help, you know, the board as they don't have to wait until a year and try to compile everything into a 5, 4, 3, or 2. I will also say that I think the superintendent scores himself very low, being the humble person that he is, and we've had that discussion multiple years. And having been in the classroom, I probably evaluated on the high end with teachers for the great job they're doing. And the state sometimes didn't like that because they wanted everybody to be a 3. But it's real easy, having been an evaluator, to stay under that 5 exceeds, because you don't have to, I'll just say that, and it's out there, you don't have to justify it or validate it. It takes more time to give a 1 or a 5, because you have to, you can go down through there and mark 3s all day long or mark 4s, and you don't have to give any evidence. But when you score a 5 or a 1, you have to give evidence. So, but I do like the fact that there is the ability to give that evidence in the narrative. So I've spoken too much on the evaluation process, but I just felt like, having taught under 5 and served on the board under 3, that I did have some knowledge there that I should share. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bounds. Okay, I see no other, Mr. McMillan?
I will be brief. I wasn't going to say anything, but I want to make a couple of comments in reference to, one in particular, reference to what Mr. Thomas said. He talked about changing his mind. All of us have changed our mind. And I personally think that if you realize that you made something that's not satisfactory, and that it's not too late to change your mind, I think only a fool would stay with the original decision. I really, really believe that. And one other thing that I wanted to say, you were pretty assertive this morning in your response, which I think, and I believe the majority of people think, it is a good thing. And we ought to see, in my opinion, we ought to see more of this assertiveness in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Yeah, yes, Virginia, Ms. Babb, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I will probably agree with Mr. McMillan. I appreciated Mr. Thomas's comments that he just made. I actually felt several of them were directed directly at me, because I have been very blunt with Mr. Thomas about things I think we could do better. And I will say he is always very open to listening, and that is one thing I will definitely compliment him on. And the other thing I would like to say, and this comes up with a lot of the communication issues and things like we've had, he is in a very tough position. And I have criticized some things we've done. I think there have been some constructive things I've put out there. But he has got 9 bosses, and we all come from very different backgrounds and opinions. And, he has to listen to all of us. But then he is also kind of persecuted in the court of public opinion. And I've kind of learned no matter what he does, or what Knox County School does, which he is the leader of Knox County Schools, and I'm seeing it right now with the communication that just went out. People ask for some communication and some kind of timeline. He put out a timeline. There's nothing but criticism about it. And so I do feel for him, because I do feel he is in a position that no matter what he does, he's got 9 of us pulling at him, but then he's got the public opinion too that beats him up no matter what he does. So I do have to say, I appreciate you. Like I said, you listen to me. I bring constructive criticism, I hope, to you, but I also appreciate, because I know the superintendent of Knox County Schools, as big as we are, is not an easy job for anyone. And I know this has been an extremely, extremely difficult year, and we're not over with it. And it's not going to get any better, I think, in the court of public opinion as we go forward, because whatever we make decision-wise going forward, we're still going to make a lot of people mad. So I just kind of want to put that out there, because I do appreciate it. And I go along with Mr. McMillan. I think that sometimes speaking up more and giving us your thoughts is appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Babb. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One quick comment that I thought of, then I'm through. You referenced, Bob, the sometimes information got out before it got to principals and board members and stuff. And I realized what you're talking about, that you rely on taking opinions of groups of people. So obviously, other people know about it other than yourself. But I strongly believe that we should make an effort to try to get the information to the principals, to the board members. I think it should go to the board members, or maybe board members and principals simultaneously. What happens, I guess, is if the principals get it first, they're friends with somebody, or somebody calls them, and that's the way it gets out. But it's we're only talking about a short period of time, but it's really embarrassing from a board member's perspective when somebody calls you from the general public and you don't know what they're talking about, because the information hadn't made its way down the line. I would like to see us work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion looking at the contract.
We need to approve the evaluation first.
I apologize.
We have a motion on the
Motion to
floor,
approve.
correct?
Motion to approve the evaluation as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hill, a second by Mr. Norman. Any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Coatney, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Bounds?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Ms. Christie? Yes. Ms. Horn?
Yes, and motion carries 9-0. Okay, and go ahead, Ms. Coatney, with the next item agenda.
Next item is discussion and possible action regarding employment contract with Superintendent Bob Thomas.
Everyone should have a copy at your desk. Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion as we look at this amendment to the contract. I'm looking at Section 2 Term of Agreement. Currently is in effect till April 6, 2021. I would like to make a motion to extend that to June 30th, 2022 to align with our calendar year. And then a bookkeeping matter in 4 under compensation. We have the line about an action the board took after the vote last year. Pursuant to such vote, 2019, the increase of 4%, that be eliminated.
Madam Chair, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hill, just might want to suggest something from our office before, hopefully before there's a second. But since Mr. Thomas's contract is maxed out at 4 years currently, it would not legally be an extension. It would actually be a renewal or a new contract. But we would suggest that you could make the same motion that you've already made with the language that it's actually a new contract using the same form that's already in place.
I'm happy to do that, to revise my motion for a new contract beginning April 6, 2021 and extending to June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hill, a second by Mr. Norman. Do we have discussion? Ms. Owen, do you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Dupler, the original contract was a 2-year contract, is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Owen, the original contract was 2 years, and then it was extended by resolution to 3 years, and then the most recent amendment that you have before you extended it to the full 4 years.
Okay. I would suggest that in creating a new contract, that it also be for a minimum of 2 years.
Mr. Dubler?
Just to clarify, Ms. Owen, so are you making an amendment to the motion?
So you're saying,
I'm just making the suggestion. So if Ms. Hill would like to do that.
okay, Ms. Hill, are you agreeable?
No, I'd like to have it stand right now through 2022.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on Ms. Hill's motion. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay. Ms. Babb's good. Okay. Ms.
I'm sorry.
Satterfield?
Is this also including the taking out what you recommended, this motion that we're about to vote on, the 4%?
Oh, yes, and that actually, I guess it was before you were on the board. It was a formality because we had not yet voted on the 4% for our teachers, so it was included in there to keep us from having to come back and redo. But yes, given the fact that our own teachers, I mean, there was nothing this year, I would take that out.
Okay, and then the only other question would be, Mr. Thomas has stated that he wants to, it's included in the budget that he has 5 furlough days, which would decrease the salary of $200,000. So we would need to address that as well, correct? So, Mr. Thomas, would you like to speak to this contract?
That's correct. In terms of the furlough days, and if I'm going to ask everybody, I'm going to do what I ask everybody else to do. So I'm going to take 5 days. So I'll do this job for less. That's the way it is. So like a lot of other people are doing it for less. But I would like for the fact that if it's reinstated for everybody else, I'd like for it to be reinstated for the superintendent as well. And I don't know what the budget's going to look like. When we talked about this, we said we would like to come back depending on the revenue and look at the 5 days because I know folks work hard again, and I appreciate the fact they're giving up 5 days. But if revenue is such that we can put it back, I'd like to do that. Also, on the insurance piece, if revenue is such that we can. The board can match their share of the increase for insurance. Would like to do those 2 things, but again, I would only ask if it's reinstated for everybody else, if you give me some consideration as well. So thank you.
Certainly. So Ms. Hill is agreeable to that. So the language then, Mr. Dupler, would reflect that it's current, that it would be the reduction of the 5 days with the understanding that it would be reinstated, both salary and insurance, as we are able to reinstate other employees affected by that 5-day furlough. And Mr. Norman, you seconded that? You agree? Okay, we're all on the same page. Okay, any other comments? Ms. Satterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Superintendent Thomas, do you want to be here till 2022?
I want the opportunity to consider this contract that's been recommended. So speaking of communication, until 3 days ago, I thought my contract was going to be voted on July 15th. So I was told Tuesday afternoon, no, it's going to be Friday, June 19th. So I would like an opportunity to work with Ms. Horn, the chair, and also Mr. Dupler, and consider what has been offered here and just work through that process with them, and I know, to the board. So I enjoy the job I'm doing. But listen, I work for you. You don't work for me. But a contract is a mutual agreement between two parties. So, you either want me working for you or you don't, and I either want to work for you or I don't. So I'm going to consider everything and then see where that lands. But again, I work for this board, so the important thing for me is, does this board want me working for you? So, thank you.
So I certainly hope that you will determine that you do want to work for us, Bob. So this is a discussion. We do not have a contract ready to approve at this point. We will need to ratify a contract at our July 15th meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Dupler?
Yes. So just let me clarify for everybody, this board, the way that would work. If you all make an offer today, which it sounds like, well, obviously there's a motion on the floor to make an offer. Mr. Thomas would need to accept that by Monday, and then what would happen in July is that the actual written contract would appear on the board's agenda, and then it would be ratified at that time. But due to the way the code reads, that's the reason for the updated timeline, Mr. Thomas, unfortunately, and just like everything else, I think the pandemic has affected this as well.
And let me say one thing too, because again, my comments, Ms. Bell, I wasn't trying to direct those to any one individual. I love y'all. I really do. Y'all are a great board. Every chance I get to brag on you, I try to brag on you because you do a terrific job and you work well together. And I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate the criticism, constructive criticism too. But just know whether you want me here or you don't, I still love you. So if that makes a difference, fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Miss Babb. And Miss Owen also has her mic down. Miss Babb.
Sure, and I will make this comment, and I've already spoken about how I appreciate the work that Mr. Thomas does, and I don't say anything to him that I won't say, or I won't say anything publicly that I'm not saying to him, and I have appreciated what he's done. I think he has come in at a time that there was some turmoil in our school system. I think that I look at our board, and I think a lot of times we disagree, but we disagree and we walk away and we accept the decision of each other, and I appreciate that, and I think that's some harmony that has come under Mr. Thomas's leadership. Although I spoke to him, I do think after the period of time he's been in, I do think it is time for us to be doing a search for a new superintendent. And so I will not be voting on an extension till June 2022, but respectfully realize that we have got a full board. So anyway, I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Ms. Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify with Mr. Dupler. We approve it today, and if Mr. Thomas accepts by Monday, that keeps us under the 45-day limit, and we can still ratify it in July.
That's correct. At that point, this board and Mr. Thomas would have a contract. In written form, though, it would need to be ratified, just so that obviously we have the written contract, not just a verbal contract.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's
Okay. Okay. Ms. Christie?
So July just makes it official, so whatever we decide today will be, assuming everyone, Mr. Thomas accepts or agrees, will be done after today.
Mr.
As far
Dupler?
as
Yes, Ms. Christie. I mean, you are, if this board votes for the motion that's on the floor, in favor of the motion, obviously, then an offer is then made to Mr. Thomas, then Mr. Thomas would need to respond or ideally accept the offer, and once he accepts the offer, then there's a contract. And then in July, you would have the written form that would simply, reflect what that contract is. It's been described already, but obviously we want to have it in written form so that everybody knows what it is.
Yeah,
Ms. Christie?
and I mean, it is awkward having this discussion with, because I think, we all appreciate and love you. I mean, it does bother me because this evaluation model is just really frustrating, especially when so much of it is thrown out, and to base it on something that seem to continually be kind of tossing a big portion of it out. So,
Okay. Your frustration is noted. Thank you.
Call for the question.
Okay. Ms. Coatney? Roll call. Yes. Can you state the motion again, Ms.?
No, that's okay. The motion on the floor is to create an employment contract for Superintendent Bob Thomas at the current salary level, noting the 5 furlough days, as well as extending the date through June 30th, 2022.
Is that?
Ms. Hill, would you like to restate the motion in your words? It was never stated as a complete motion, so I don't want to put words in your...
I'd like to make a motion that we have a new contract for our superintendent that reads like the existing contract, with the exception of the extension to June 30th, 2022. In addition, recognizing our unique circumstances with the furlough and health insurance, and that when this is restored to our employees, will also be restored to our superintendent. And then the section that does not apply because it was last year's, given the 4% after the fact.
And that the rest of the contract would remain
Yes. And
as it's stated.
Yes.
Is that clear? And Mr. Norman is good with that. So, okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Ms. Coney?
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Ms. Babb?
No.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Bounds?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan? Yes. Ms. Christie?
no.
Ms. Horn?
Yes.
7 yes votes.
7 yes votes. Motion carries. So, thank you for the discussion. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
We have Bourne forward and make it snappy because we got people that need to hit the road.
Nothing.
Ms. Owen? No. Ms. Hill, anyone ever here have board forum? No. Motion adjourned.